welcome to the channel. My name is Dani Walker, and this is the first ever recap of the top 16 at Miss Universe. If you're brand new and enjoy content like this, please consider subscribing and hitting that notifications bell. And also, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by hitting that super thanks button or shopping in the merch store or simply sharing the episode with a friend. That is a huge help that I greatly appreciate. Now, if you're a pageant contestant preparing for a competition, check out the free pageant prep course that's linked in the description. So let's get right into this. I love this episode so much because the veil is finally being lifted, and I feel like you're really gonna get to see how unique these women are and how important the interview competition is. Now, I'm gonna share my personal opinions about these interviews, and I think that's really cool. And what I like about this episode is I'm gonna share with you like what I really appreciated about the interviews, and your interpretation of their interviews is probably going to be a lot different. And this is exactly why judging panels are so important, and it's exactly why there are surprises at pageants. So let this just be this cool example of how subjective pageantry is, because I know that the ladies that I loved are probably going to be different from your favorites. So let's get into it. I would also encourage you to head over to the Miss Universe channel to actually watch these interviews for yourself. Australia, I think, did very well, but for me, if I was scoring this interview, this is sitting in that semi-finalist placement, which is exactly where she ended up finishing for the overall pageant. The reason that I say that is because she really stuck to focusing on her involvement with boxing and women's self-defense. And I know that some of the questions that were asked to her really were setting her up for that. But as a contestant, once you mention one part of that personal brand, you should really move on to a different branding point, so you're not basically repeating the same thing over and over to the judges, but said in a different way. So she did a great job, but because she wasn't really introducing us to other parts of herself and other facets, that's what would have resulted in a lower score from me. Canada. So she was really cute to me. She ended up coming across as so likable. I loved that. Very easy to talk to. She also shared with us about her organic skincare line and how she's going to school and how her passions are really meshing with her education, and how in the future she hopes to create a sustainable fashion line or sustainably made fabric. So her interview was very interesting. You can really tell though what an intelligent young woman she is from this interview and how much depth that she has. Now, if you were paying attention, you probably noticed that there's people in the background or other contestants. And that's because at Miss USA and at Miss Universe, they take the judging panel for prelims and they cut them in half and they split them. So you'll actually have two contestants interviewing at the same time. So I actually went into my interview with Sarah Rose. We walked into the room and then they said start, at which point we both walked towards our respective judges' tables. When the time was up, you'll hear this big cowbell, and that's the same bell that they had when we were competing. That bell's been around for forever. At that time, you swap with the other contestant and go to the other panel. Now, I'm not sure if anybody else really noticed that Paula Shugart was sitting at one of those judges' tables. And so that's when it really comes into play when they talk about at the beginning of the show that the new title holder is selected by judges and members of the Miss Universe organization. Now, although this has never been explicitly stated, I still believe that Paula Shugart has a big influence in who's making it into those semifinals. When I competed at Miss USA, although Paula wasn't technically on the panel or announced as a preliminary judge, she was sitting at the second group of judges that I met with, and she actually asked me questions during the interview process. Colombia did a really great job here. My one critique for her though is to shorten up her answers. There were some instances where she was essentially just saying the same thing in a different phrasing or with different words. So ladies, you really need to know that once you get your main point across, cut it off, move on to the next question. So I think that that could have really enhanced her interview. And the other thing is that you'll notice for her interview, we actually got to see some of her answers from both panels, and we didn't see that for all of the contestants. Haiti. Wow. Also, she had a translator, and I've always wondered how this would work. I would really love to see in the future that if a contestant has a translator, that the translation does not cut into their interview time at all. I don't think it does too much, but I wish that there was more of like a stop and go timer for them so that that translation wasn't accounted for at all, that they would really have that full time. So Haiti, she opened up by sharing that she was an orphan, and the way that she communicated this, it just really got my heart. And I was like, wow, to be an orphan and to end up at the Miss Universe stage really just touches my heart. Many of you know I just didn't grow up in a great situation, and I haven't even shared fully the extent of all of that and my own life experience. But when I look at myself and my own journey, what I can tell you is that statistically, I should have never made it to the Miss USA stage. I probably shouldn't be here right now with this channel, but regardless of all of those different obstacles that were set before me, I was able to overcome those things. And so when I hear a story like this, like hers, I didn't have the same experience, but I can just imagine that internal strength and fortitude that it took to get where she is. And that was beautiful. And so anyway, she continued, she talked about her community, and I felt like this was such a solid interview. The only thing that she was missing, and it's just a matter of phrasing, is just being very specific about, and if I had the opportunity to be Miss Universe, or my plans for this year, or here's what you can expect from me as a title holder. I felt like a phrasing like that would have really strengthened this interview. India? Oh, I loved her. I thought that I would, and I was not wrong. She is so articulate, like many Miss Universe Indias. She just had some great moments here. Okay, this was one of my favorite interviews as well. Gosh, this is why it's so hard to judge pageants, friends. This is why it's like, yeah, you fall in love with them in an interview, and then you just gotta say, okay, well, let's see who does well on stage. And then you just got to give it to the lady who does really well on stage too. And then nails the on stage question. It's tough. Anyways, so they asked her about the pressure that she feels representing India because Harnaz, obviously. But what I liked is that she actually led with saying, yes, there's a lot of pressure representing a country of over 1 billion people. She didn't lead with Harnaz. She led with something else about her country. And I was like, ooh, smart, brilliant. Then, of course, she addressed Harnaz as well and talked about, you know, having some big shoes to fill. Makes a lot of sense. But what I liked is that she said that she feels a different excitement though, because she had a different upbringing and a different story than Harnaz, even though they share the same country. She mentioned that she's passionate about making education accessible to all kids. And then this is the important part, she went a step further and she gave examples of how she's been doing that. And that's what a lot of y'all are missing in your interviews. Then they asked her, what is your insecurity? And she said, the disease to please. And I've never heard that before. It made everybody laugh and giggle. It made me laugh. So it was this great light moment in her interview. Brilliant. And I just loved it. And she talked about how she used to mold herself into what people wanted, and that she realized now that there is great strength in being who you are, even if you have to walk that path alone. So she ended on a high note. Laos. What have I said about these cultural outfits? Okay, here, you're gonna see it in action. She opened up with saying that her outfit symbolized Laos, but also the Hmong people, which she is a part of. So it was literally a combination of her. So brilliant, fantastic. Now, she talked about not only the significance of that outfit, but it led her into the history of Lao women. And I was absolutely blown away by this answer. And once again, I'm just feeling very emotional about this, listening to her answer, because she talked about how in her country that parents or partners are basically in charge of your life if you are a woman. And she shared this story about a family member who had committed suicide. She wanted to get out of this bad marriage. She couldn't get out. She wasn't brought back in by her family, and these women really have nowhere to go. She talked about the culture of women in her country and that they are often supposed to be seen as just quiet, meek, and that's what many of them are. But that many people have come up to her and said they are inspired by her, and they're asking her, how do I become like you? How do I become more confident? How do I get to that Miss Universe stage and accomplish all of these things? And I was just totally drawn in by that. And I would have loved her too. And I would have been rooting for her. And I would have been like, girl, I want you to win this Miss Universe crown. I really do. Because it would be so significant to so many people if she were to win. So that was like really, really special. Now, interviews make me so emotional. Now, she also mentioned that only 5% of people in her country speak English, and that she wanted to help with this, so that when she was 17, she became an English teacher. She shared quite a bit about that and just how it made her unique, but really, I mean, she had me at the beginning. Peru, so well done. I was so excited because I hadn't heard her speak up until this point. I loved it. They asked her about the criticism that she has faced, and she answered so well. She stated her personal experiences. She talked about how because of her family, she's grown up in the public eye, and honestly that it was the experience that actually she now benefits from because she faced so much scrutiny as Miss Peru, because people weren't accepting of her. They said, you don't represent Peruvian women because you have blonde hair. She also talked about her swimsuit cape, brilliant, and that it represented diversity of women because of those personal experiences that she had faced. Something else that she mentioned that was important to her is that she has been independent since she was 18 years old, and so financial literacy is something important for her, and that her passion though is childhood education. Portugal, I felt like this, for me, I would have ranked this in a semi-final placement. Like, that was the feeling I got. I think that she did an incredible job. She shared a lot about her battle with depression, which is just, gosh, it's such a huge thing. And you could really feel how caring and sweet that she was. But when I really thought back to this interview, there wasn't kind of like some super memorable moment that I would be able to recount and pull from. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's what ends up putting a lot of interviews over the top, is just like that one little moment that the judges are recalling that keeps you on their mind. South Africa. First of all, I haven't really mentioned this much, but I love the South African accent. It's beautiful to me. It's music to my ears. Second, she is so charming. So I had a feeling already that she was very well equipped for this. I've talked about it in a lot of other episodes. And she made this really, really great point though in her interview about representation, and that when you don't see things being done, it's really hard to do them. And she referenced that because she was the first in her family to go to college to pursue her education. Same here. And I can tell you from personal experience that was very, very difficult, because as I was going through that process of applying for schools, of starting my first week at college, of not knowing how to manage my schedule anymore, I felt alone. I had nobody to turn to. I actually failed my first semester of college. Fun fact. Actually, not a fun fact. Didn't tell my family about it. And I was so embarrassed because I was supposed to be the one that was successful, but I was drowning and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to get help from. I ended up learning a lot about just being accountable to myself. I met with a counselor. I met with them for every semester up until I graduated. So I made sure that I would stay on track, and that was huge for me. And so I understand where she's coming from. I understand how difficult that journey is if you've never seen anybody else do it. And I will say that the other questions she was asked, I wouldn't say were especially challenging in her interview, but they did really put her in a position to be very well liked. That was my opinion. Like, the questions that she asked, her answers to them were just very likable. Spain was interesting. Love her tweed outfit, by the way. I didn't get to talk about it in another episode, but she's so cute. Fresh-faced as well. It was interesting that when she walked in and started speaking, I was like, oh my gosh, she sounds like a Filipina. Then she mentioned how she had actually moved to the Philippines. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that would make a lot of sense. Now, she also talked a lot about her experience in the modeling industry, an eating disorder that she had, and she talked about how throughout Miss Universe that she wants to stay true to herself, that that's something important to her. That's why she's been wearing neutral colors. She hasn't been wearing fake eyelashes. She's been completely herself through the competition because if she were to win, she wants to win being authentically herself, and I love that. Now, her interview though, it was a lot more serious, but she did speak very passionately about things. I do think that she probably should have added in something into that interview to lighten it up a little bit because it was a lot. Trinidad and Tobago. This interview is probably in my personal top 5 interviews. I didn't actually write down scores for these, but that would be my guess. I was so impressed by her. First, they were talking to her about her time at Miss World, also her hair being up, the way it was styled, it looked fabulous. But she talked about how she wants to be a change agent. And she also mentioned how the work that she does with children and in her country transfers over to every aspect of her life. Wink, wink, the role and responsibilities of Miss Universe. When I was listening to her and her passion and how articulate she was and how descriptive she was, I just thought, what an incredible ambassador she is for her country. I also really liked the personal story about her getting to Miss Universe. So she was born in 1993, and Wendy Fitzwilliams, Miss Universe 1994, is also from Trinidad and Tobago, and she was talking about how her mom would tell her that she was gonna be Miss Universe after they saw Wendy win the title, and Wendy was a preliminary judge this year, which is so cool. I love that. After this interview though, honestly, I was just obsessed with her. Also, just her use of analogies in her interview to be able to communicate things that were very unique to her industry in a way that judges would be able to relate to and understand. It was brilliant, and she was captivating. I loved her. Curacao did a great job as well, and I really want to mention her interview because you'll notice that she went over time and she continued to speak. She was allowed to do so, and that is okay, ladies. These timers and these buzzers for things like interview or on-stage question, they're usually not like cut and dry and set in stone unless prior to the competition they've allowed you to pre-prepare something. So that's why when we have competitions like a personal introduction competition, it's fair game for an organization to say, look, you have 30 seconds, and if you go over those 30 seconds with your pre-prepared speech, then you can lose points. But when we're doing things in areas of competition that are spontaneous, like interview or like on-stage question, you cannot expect anyone to be fully engaged with the judging panel and to deliver heartfelt and inspirational answers while keeping track of some internal clock for that interview. So ladies, it is okay if you go a little bit over if the judges allow you to do so. Now, if you were in a situation where the judges said stop, or if your director or your pageant organization said you absolutely must stop at that buzzer, not say another word, that's a different scenario. But 9 times out of 10, if you go over a little bit, if you get some permission to wrap up the answer, that is okay. Puerto Rico. So I loved the opening of her interview. They asked her about why does she want to go to space? Like, why does this matter to her? Why she's pursuing this? I just loved her answer for this. She said that when she was a little girl, she would look up at the stars, and what's so unique about the universe is that it's ever expanding, and she had this idea that, gosh, if I can't be Miss Universe, at least I'll go to the universe. And I was like, oh gosh, that was just so cute. Also, because of her background in education, you can really tell how studious she is. She did mention that she was a little bit awkward when she was younger and that pageants helped with that. One thing that she was very skilled in is keeping her answers concise. She was able to stay very on top of it, very organized throughout this whole process. Something to mention is that she, as well as some other contestants, were asked some similar questions by both judging panels. And you'll notice that the ladies essentially have the same answer for both panels. And this is a question I get from contestants. They say, do I need a different answer? No, you don't. You can use basically the same answer that you gave from one judge to the next. You just wouldn't want to repeat yourself in front of the same group of people. Dominican Republic. I was very excited to see this one because I just did not know as much about her leading up to the competition. So she had a very likable interview for me, and also she's just so stunning. Okay, she's stunning. So they asked her about her biggest insecurity, and she mentioned that it was her accent, but the way that she answered this was so real and vulnerable and cute. Oh my gosh, the way that she said it, she would have had me right there. She just got to reel it in at that point, okay? She would have had me. And then she also talked about how she had moved from the Dominican to the Bronx with her dad and her brother, and how she had to take on these responsibilities of essentially becoming the mom in the household at a very young age. So I like that she shared that she shared her challenges, and it's just amazing to see how far she's come, and that she returned to the Dominican, competed, and now has all of these amazing opportunities because of it. So that really got me too. Venezuela, she shared that her dad was a soccer player and soccer coach, and they asked her about all of her moves because she had gotten a scholarship to study abroad in Italy. Originally, she thought it was going to be in English. Turns out it was in Italian, and her parents really encouraged her to take that risk and go and study in Rome. They were like, you'd be crazy not to take this opportunity. And so she did that. And she said that she thinks that because of who her dad is, that she was able to be very encouraged because he followed his dreams into following her dreams. That was beautiful. She talked about how because of her dad, she got to help design the national jerseys for the Venezuelan soccer team. Super cool experience there. That's very unique. They also asked her a question like, who does she think would be best to be Miss Universe? And she kind of didn't answer the question, but she did share something I thought important, and she says that I was crowned 1 year and 3 months ago for Miss Venezuela, and she said that this competition, it's all about being your best self, and that what she hopes is that the person that people see on stage, the version of her that they see during prelims or in that interview, is going to be a version better than she was when she first got crowned. So she was great. She was very happy in this interview. Clearly a semi-finalist interview. And here's the thing about these interviews, ladies. You don't actually have to have like the best interview in a competition because it is so subjective. But you want to be thinking like, okay, in terms of numbers and breaking things down. You know, if there's going to be a top 16, you want to think, okay, well, I need one of the top 16 best interviews. I need one of the top 16 best swimsuit and gown performances, so I make sure that my scores are consistent. So I really encourage you to take that pressure off of yourself, because my interpretation of the best interview is probably different from yours, and that goes for any judging panel. So keep that in mind when you're preparing for a competition. Albany, Miss USA. So first of all, I haven't even seen an entrance quite like this, so I can't really remember an entrance quite like this, and it was different from the other contestants. She walked in, hi, I'm Albany, I'm Miss USA. It was just so happy and energetic. I really love the tone that she set right away. And the tough thing about it is they asked her right away about rigging allegations, and honestly, I like this though. And if I were in her position, if I got that question, I would say, thank goodness they asked me about that, because what if that was in the back of their heads? What if that was a concern for them that I wasn't able to address? And she got to address it head on. And she said that she felt like, of course, it was disparaging to her in her preparation, but that she felt that God put that in front of her, and that now she gets to be this story of resilience. It was a challenge that she faced that she feels has better prepared her. She connected that outfit to a thunderstorm, and the thunderstorm that she experienced as Miss USA, and also the thunderstorms that we all experience in life. That was beautiful. She talked about pageantry being relevant because of personal transformation. Hello, transformational leader. That was brilliant. She also talked about how the way it transformed her life is by helping her to become a better communicator, and that she also shared a little bit about her upcycling and sustainable fashion. So this was a great interview, very likable. She kept things like upbeat and fun while still being able to address things that were a little bit more serious. So great job. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you watched my other post Miss Universe episodes, because I made quite a few others. Well, let me know what you want to see on the next episode though. I greatly appreciate all of your support. To everyone out there who has subscribed and who's on that notifications team, okay, who comes every single week to tune into new episodes. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you very soon.